NumismaTalks. Every second and fourth Thursday of the month at noon Mountain, we will be here with a new presentation. During this presentation, you may come up with questions. If you do, please use the Q&A button at the bottom or top of the screen based on where you have it to send in your questions, and then we will try to get those answered at the end. So now, sorry, went off script a little bit there. Now I would like to introduce you to today's presenter, David Schwager. Am I saying the last name right, David?
Schwager, but anything's okay.
Schwager, thank you. I meant to ask you that earlier. David has written for several numismatic publications, including the Numismatist, Coinage, Coin Week, and Fun Topics. He wrote the book Sample Slabs, the definitive work on this numismatic specialty. David is known as an authority on certified coin holders or slabs and often consulted in this area. David lives in Fountain Valley, California, where he is president of the Orange County Coin Club. David will be presenting Sample Slabs. It's all yours, David.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paula. Let's see, presentation. All right. Yeah, thanks for bringing me back to ANA and do these presentations both in person and over the web for the ANA. That's always a privilege here. So first question is, what is a sample slab? So we all know what a slab is, a certified coin holder. We all know what a free sample is. Put those two together and you have a sample slab. So back when certification was a new thing, 35, 40 years ago, the certifiers would often give away examples of their work to demonstrate their product, show people what this new technology, new idea was about. They're still given away today to, for example, as promotional giveaways to attract customers, the same way you might give someone a cap or a pin or anything else. These slabs are given away to show new features. You might want to show your authorized dealer what new security features are so they can recognize the genuine article. They might be given as gifts for special customers, such as members of set registries or people who have purchased from you before, that kind of thing. Now, I explained what a sample slab is, but in a way, I almost don't need to answer that question. When I started doing this, started working on this specialty over 10 years ago, not many people knew. There were certainly some people who were interested in certified coin holders, but not nearly as many as there were today. So samples were given away, usually with inexpensive coins in them, something like the 1960s silver Roosevelt you see in the example here. State quarters are often used, that kind of thing. And they're still given away to this day. So why should anyone care? Well, one of the reasons is that samples hide in plain sight. One of the best feelings in numismatics, other than the joy of learning, is when you get to cherry pick something. Often these holders will be in dealer cases, on eBay, in coin shops, valued only at the value of the inexpensive coin inside. So I certainly had plenty of times where I was able to get something that had a little value, and I always feels like a win. Another reason is that this is an area that, even though I and other people have been researching it for several years right now, there's still so much we don't know. If you're an expert on Peace and Morgan dollar VAMs, you're probably never going to find it. If you become a collector of sample slabs, I guarantee you're going to find something that even the experts have never seen before. So you can add to the body of numismatic research. It's also challenging. One of my favorite, the best types of things to collect are things that are hard to find, but not that expensive when you do, because we all enjoy the thrill of the hunt. If something's expensive but common, all you have to do is come up with the money. But there are things in my collection that are not that worth that much, but the one I have is the only one I've ever seen. Also, even rarities are usually not super expensive, although that is changing day by day. So it's in this, especially like this, you can have a world-class collection on a middle-class income. finally, coin certification has had so much impact on numismatics in the last few decades that telling the story of numismatics is in some way telling the story of certification. And by researching and collecting coin certificates and holders, you are telling the story of coin collecting. So how did I get into sample slabs? I first heard the topic way back in 2012 on the Coin Show podcast. They interviewed a researcher named Alan Canavan, who had a small website on samples. So not long after that, I was at a bid board. People remember bid boards at coin shops? When I saw one up there on the bid board, NGC sample, much like the one I showed in the first slide, I said, I know what that thing is. So there was that thrill of secret knowledge. Picked it up. I began trying to obtain these as I saw them at shops and shows, but there's no book, there's no guide, there's no market research. So I started doing my own research. In 2013, I began typing every eBay completed sample slab sale into a spreadsheet. And I continue that spreadsheet up to today. I've got something like 18,000 entries. That research led to an article in the Numismatist as a cover story here in 2015. In that article, I said, someone should write a book on that. And by the time that article came out, I was that someone. So the first edition of the Sample Slabs book came out in 2015. One of the reasons I did the book is I was hoping that people would say, hey, good job doing this, but here's a few things you don't know about. That did happen. And over the year between the first and second edition, I added about 180 types. Went up from, I think, about 540 types to about 720 types in the second edition. People were sending me a new one every 2 days. There's even more research going on. There's vintage slabs we're still finding, new certifiers we've never heard of. The certifiers are still giving away new pieces, particularly shows in Asia, where they are prolifically distributing samples. And there's a third edition in progress. My friend Burton Strauss is doing most of the work on that. He's up to, I think, about 1,200 types at this point. And when people show you a coin or really any other collectible, one of the first questions they ask is, what's it worth? Well, that's not always the most important question, but it is an important question. Most samples are fairly inexpensive. A lot of them are $8, $10, $12. If you take a look at my eBay research, you've got a mean price of about $40. My collection, I probably have about 200 pieces that maybe average 100 or so each. The most valuable one, which is up there on my wet bar somewhere, probably about 1,400 is what I paid for it. The most valuable sample slab ever is this one. People have heard of the famous PCGS Regency holder. If you haven't seen the PCGS Museum of Coin Holders, definitely take a look online. This sold back in 2016 for $3,550. It's the only one that ever sold. This is the most valuable sample slab of all time so far. If it went on sale today, I'm sure I couldn't even touch it. Now, one thing when people are bringing up samples is they often say, that's not a sample because it doesn't have the word sample on it. And that's true up to a point. Generally, collectors of sample slabs use the term broadly. So there's used both those things that were given away as samples of their work and have the word sample on them, but also pretty much any other holder that isn't a production holder. Production holder, I mean a holder that was made for the actual purpose of protecting, authenticating, attributing, and grading a coin or other object. So let's talk about a few of these other types that you'll encounter when you're talking about sample slabs. First is promotional slab. These are my own terms, so they're not authoritative pronouncements, but they're useful ways to organize what we talk about. Promotional slab advertises someone other than the grading service. Sample slab is an ad for the grading service. The promotional slab is an ad for someone else. So this one, for example, is listed as complements of Universal Coin and Bullion, UCB, which is a giant bullion dealer. You see their ad in the inside back cover of Coin World almost every month. Presumably these were given away as premiums to new customers or rewards for good customers or that sort of thing. This would be pretty good to get even a tiny gold coin. You have club slabs. These were given away by, well, coin clubs, any non-commercial numismatic organization. The ANA has given away many, for example, to ANA club representatives, example, but they're usually local coin clubs. ANAX will, if you have a coin club, ANAX will happily make one for you. The other services generally only do it if you have connections inside. For example, NGC does a great job with coin clubs in Florida, making slabs for them for the Tallahassee Club, Sarasota Club, and a few others. I've seen quite a few. This is one that I had made for the Orange County, California Club when the ANA came to Anaheim in 2016. So there's the Greater Orange County Coin Club welcomes you to our area here for the ANA show. Some people ask me, why did I use the Nixon dollar? Well, one, it was a current year coin of that year, 2016. Also, he was from Orange County, so that was the local connection. A slab can fall into more than one category. There's also a show slab. So this one is also a show slab, which means it talks about a coin show. Generally, these are souvenirs of the show rather than items meant to promote the show. So if you go to one of the big shows, if you go to Central States, you go to ANA, you go to Fun, you go to Long Beach, there will usually be at least one of the certifiers will be giving away holders that are pedigreed to that particular show. So I went to Rosemont ANA in 2021, for example. So I have a PMG holder with a inexpensive foreign banknote on the back that says ANA Convention Rosemont 2021. Right. Luncheon slabs. So these are the the two biggest certifiers, NGC and PCGS, hold luncheons for members of their set registry. These are usually held at either the ANA convention, the Fun convention in Orlando, and sometimes at the Long Beach Expo. The PCGS luncheon slabs are strongly pursued. There are people who go to the luncheons just to get the holder, and older luncheon slabs are avidly collected and can be fairly valuable. I collect only the ones for the luncheons I went to myself, like this one from the ANA show in 2019. Also, there's YN slabs. YN, Young Numismatist, our jargon for a child or sometimes young adult who's a coin collector. At the ANA conventions and Long Beach, the certifiers will hold these treasure hunt or treasure trivia contests in which children can go from one booth to another answering trivia questions. Someone who answers all the questions then will get some prizes, which usually include a slab pedigree to the event. PCGS even had a set registry just for the treasure hunt slabs. So if you have some kids, grandkids, bring them to the show, they can do the treasure hunt or treasure trivia and they'll get a little prize. I brought my daughter once, she didn't want it, so I gave her a few bucks for it and she went away very happy. Then there's novelty slabs. This is anything that doesn't fit into any other category. It's not a production slab, which actually authenticates and grades a coin. It's not one of those others, but they were done either for someone's own amusement. They were done to test the slabbing equipment. They were done as a joke. This one here, my friend Mike Vanier, who's a former PCGS grader, had made this in 2010 while management was away over Christmas break. So he put a chocolate coin inside a PCGS holder, wrote a hand-lettered label and kept it as a souvenir. He consigned his collection to me about 10 years ago, and I did sell this. I heard that someone's air conditioning went out and melted a little bit, so it's no longer in mint condition. That's what I've heard a couple people say about the chocolate when they said, "Does it have milk spots?" And whether it is it mint chocolate or novelty slabs? So who made all these sample slabs? Some people have asked me, how many are there? Is there more than just the big 4 certifiers? Is there 10? Is there 20? I've counted so far here 50 certifiers. So I know there are at least that many, and I keep finding new ones. And we're not leaving until I talk about every one of them. No, that's not true. But it is bewildering the number of people who've issued sample slabs. In fact, the number of certifiers goes in total of all types that have issued any type of certificate or holder goes into the hundreds. Nobody has cataloged all of them. Let's talk, however, about a few of the most interesting sample slab issues, either those that are have a particular place in history or are the most important today. First one here is AccuGrade. Several years ago, I saw a panel discussion where David Hall, one of the founders of PCGS, was saying, and I had this great idea to create the slab. Now, David Hall's a great man who I respect immensely. He deserves every bit of his wealth and reputation, but he didn't invent the slab. That was invented by a California coin dealer named Alan Hager 2 years earlier in 1984. Was the first person to put a coin into a tamper-proof holder with a label attesting to its authenticity and condition. Even the production slabs of AccuGrade are quite collectible. So if you see one, it's worth picking it up. ANAX, formerly known as the American Numismatic Association Certification Service, now simply known by the acronym of ANAX. They're the oldest coin certifier, going all the way back to 1972. They issue a lot of club slabs, a lot of show slabs. If you want to have one made for your organization, they are a pleasure to work with and will definitely make some for you at a very reasonable cost. This one here has a 5-ounce America the Beautiful silver coin in it. So I don't know what you had to do to earn a 5-ounce silver piece as a sample. Blanchard and Company is still in business. They are a dealer specializing mostly in U.S. gold coins, but briefly they were a certifier, and they did issue both. They did both grade coins and issued a couple samples. One thing about the Blanchard samples, they don't actually have the word sample on them, but are definitely known to be that. This is a pretty valuable sample. You could probably get 200 to 300 for one of these if you ever find it. And sometimes I found these in the wild unattributed. The word Blanchard is on the back, so look for that. CompuGrade is one of the most interesting certifiers. They had a plan. They claimed that they had developed a way to grade coins using computerized equipment instead of expert graders. They weren't around for very long. They opened, and closed the same year. They were in New Orleans, back in 1991. As far as I can tell, they never actually succeeded in that goal, but they did issue a small number of coins, almost all Morgan dollars, with a very few St. Gaudens that were manually graded to get their pieces out into the market. They did also give away a few samples of their work. The word CompuGrade is on the back here. If you want to see one of these, this is one of my favorite samples. They go for about $300 or $400 if you find one. As an aside, there were other attempts about the same time to do computer grading. Both ANAX and PCGS, right around 1987 to 89, had programs where they were attempting to grade coins using computers. Neither one, they didn't manage to succeed either. In that same panel discussion with David Hall I mentioned, he said that much later he talked to the same computer expert and said, hey, we have better computers now. Would that project work now? And the computer expert said, no, we just fail faster. Hallmark is this, Hallmark was founded back in 1987. They were a subsidiary of Bowers and Morena Auction, although they did grade coins for other people. This holder probably looks familiar to you because it looks just like the PCI holder that is still made today. If you look carefully along the top edge of the slab, you'll see the word Hallmark molded into the plastic. If you find a Hallmark production slab, which you will find out there, as people think they're PCI because there's lots of PCI holders around, but you can get a premium for a Hallmark slab if you ever find it. This is another one of my favorite sample slabs. This PCI sample does not, this Hallmark sample does not have a coin in it. Instead, it has a photo of a seeded dollar inside with the word photo of sample coin printed on it. So there's no coin in there. Instead, there is a photograph of a coin, and one of my favorites. It was used to promote the Norweb sale of a famous collection in 1988. ICG, or independent coin grading, if you consider the main certifiers to be the big four, ANAX, we went through ICG, NGC, PCGS. ICG was the last of the big four certifiers to open. And of course, there's the new CAC grading, which opened just about a year ago, which I don't have here, but they issued just a few samples. Other than that, they were the last one to open in 1998. Even their rarities are not that expensive. They're not as popular with collectors, and for that reason, I often like to get the super rare ones. This is another one of my favorite samples. One of the first researchers, the first serious researchers in sample slabs, was an ICG grader and coin dealer from Colorado named Cameron Kiefer. He did a website called sampleslabs.com, which we'll talk about later, and was the first person to catalog samples. He had these made for his business and would give them away to customers. Never sold them, only gave them away. So I value this as a connection to Kiefer. I even dedicated my book to him. Unfortunately, he died in 2010, so we never had a chance to meet or work together. But I treasure this as a connection to him. NCI is Numismatic Certification Institute. Just like Hallmark was part of Bowers and Morena, big auction house at the time, which has since become Stax Bowers. NCI was a branch of Heritage Auctions. The NCI logo is again on the reverse. They started making certificates actually before they did slabs, and they moved to slabs in 1989. You see hardly any of these NCI holders out there. There used to be a fair number of them around, even back when they were made. They were listed in the gray sheet. The gray sheet in this price guide gave values for NCI holders, but there's almost none around. One of the reasons is coin dealers have told me that they've had good luck breaking open these holders and getting the coins into major label holders at the same grade. So the main reason why so few still exist. This is one of, as far as I know, the only sample slab ever made by PCGS, by NCI. Has the word SAM, short for sample. Usually NCI holders have the first three letters of the customer's name on them. And until about 3 months ago, this one in my collection was the only one I'd ever seen. Fortunately, I met another collector who had two of these, which helped show me that yes, it is a sample, and at least more than mine exists. So I was happy to see that. NGC made more types of sample slabs than any other issue, hundreds of them. This one here has the gold embossing on the back rather than a hologram. So that is their first sample slab. If you find an NGC holder, look for that gold embossing. That's definitely worth a premium. There's quite a few of these around, usually with the silver Roosevelt dimes, but gold back is the good one to look for. They're also a good first sample because you get a nice older holder. These old NGCs are sometimes called the no line holder because there's no line between the label and the coin below, or fatties because they're a bit thicker and they're still quite affordable. Numex is a certifier that was almost unknown, but they've in the last year become quite popular. We still don't know much about them. All Numex holders have a 3-letter code on them. Some people believe that those that are coded XXX are sample slabs. It's unclear whether that's completely true. If I had to guess, it's that the ones with low value coins, like this one here with yet again, the silver Roosevelt dime, probably were given away as samples to potential customers. But I've also seen some with the XXX label that had more valuable coins that might be production. These used to have no premium, but now it seems like they're all worth at least 200 each in the common form. If NGC made the greatest number of types, PCGS made the greatest number of samples. In my pricing data, more than half of all sample slabs that exist are PCGS samples. There are more PCGS samples than every other type of samples put together. And there are more PCGS collectors than every other type of collectors put together. So these are the ones that are best researched, best documented, and tend to have the most value for rarities. PCGS gave a gift to its customers when they created the Museum of Coin Holders, which is on the PCGS website. That chronicles all the different types of holders. So if you ever have an older PCGS slab and you want to know the exact type, look it up on the Museum of Coin Holders. It'll tell you, yeah, that's a type 2.1, that's a type 3.0, that kind of thing. This particular one here, some of you have heard of the PCGS doily, a uncommon type that had this lacy pattern on the label, hence the name. This one right here is known as the hand-cut doily. There were, I think, maybe 8, 10, 12 made. There's no white stripe on the label like the regular doilies are. And if you look closely, the label has an irregular shape to it. So those are, yeah, one of the best PCGS samples. There are samples that hold objects other than coins, such as metals, tokens, and occasionally currency. The only sample slab that you'll see often is PCGS currency. PCGS currency had quite a few different names. They're now known as PCGS banknote. They've been known as PCGS banknote grading, PCGS gold shield grading. There was a transition period where they went through several different names, some of which were used in the US, some of which were only made in Asia. But this is the most common sample type, although individually none are really common. I like these that have the first generation holders where the label's on the side of the note rather than on the top. So where do you learn more about sample slabs? Some people have asked, wasn't there a book about that? Yes, so if you're familiar with the Coin Talk web forum, there's a prolific poster known as Condor 101, Michael Schmidt, better known as Condor 101. He wrote a book sometimes called the Slab book. The full name is Third Party Grading and Certification Services and Slab Certificate Varieties. Pretty uncommon book. He only made a couple hundred copies and the files were lost in a computer accident. You can, however, borrow this from the ANA library, which I would recommend doing. The way I got my copy at first is I borrowed it from the ANA library, and then the author gave me permission to make a photocopy. Later, I was lucky enough to find one, but that's a rare book. It's about a $300 book. There's also SampleSlabs.com I mentioned, made by Cameron Kiefer. It hasn't been updated since 2006, but it is still the most comprehensive source of sample slabs on the web, and it is still up. Then there's sample coin slabs, smaller, done in a blog style format that was updated only for a couple of years around 2010, 2013. Web forums will find less authoritative, but often newer information. The Collectors Universe forum is particularly useful. A lot of what I get is by talking to other collectors and dealers. People are constantly showing me new slabs because I'm known as the sample slab guy. So often the way I find out is someone simply sends me a message through Instagram or email and says, "Hey, what is this thing?" I'll say, "Hey, thanks for showing me. I've never seen that before." There's the Sample Slabs reference book, which is my book, up to 760 types, or yeah, I think it's 760. There'll be a third edition. I'm gonna guess early next year, which is well over 1,000. That'll be a 2-volume set. I restarted publishing my Sample Slab update newsletter too, which I do about every 2 months, sometimes sooner if I'm really ambitious. So there'll be an email at the end if you're interested in getting that. Where do you get sample slabs? Well, many of them are in fact free samples. So one of the first things is if you go to a large show, go to the certifiers booths, wait until they're not busy, and sometimes if you ask nicely, they will have one for you. Often the answer is no, but I've handled collections that were entirely obtained for free at large shows. There was like the collection I mentioned that had the chocolate coin in it that belonged to the former PCGS grader. Other than the things he made himself at the office, everything in it he got for free at a show. I've also, sometimes friends have given me their kids' collection of treasure hunt and treasure trivia, so I was able to give kids some good news. Hey, sure, I'll buy your collection. You can also get them at the treasure hunt and treasure trivia at major shows, especially A&A convention and Long Beach. By far, the biggest market is eBay. There's a ton sold there. Now, however, you're seeing a lot of them in dealer cases at shows and even in major auctions. Great collections has sample slabs for sale pretty much every week. These used to be obscure items that no one was interested in handling, but they're now at the edge of the mainstream. And as one dealer put it, once something becomes worth more than about 25 bucks, we start learning about it. So because some samples are worth a few bucks or a few hundred, or maybe 1,000 if you're really lucky, dealers are putting them in their case. It used to be that when I'd go to shows and I'd ask about sample slabs, I'd get a blank look. Now I would say if I go to a major show, probably nearly 10% of the cases have got at least one sample in them. What's the future of sample slab collecting? Well, there's way more awareness than there used to be, even far more than when the book came out in 2016, or even far more than there was, say, 3 or 4 years ago. We're at the edge of the mainstream. I think that slab collecting will never be right in the middle of numismatics, but it's there close to the mainstream. That's something akin to something like, say, hard times tokens, in that most people don't have them, but everyone knows what it is. In a way, collecting of samples and other slabs is not collecting coins, but things that are related to coins. It's a lot like, say, some of you might be classic car enthusiasts. The classic car enthusiasts, in order to collect, in addition to collecting cars, they might collect things like hubcaps, sales brochures, or gas pumps, or other things that are not cars, but they're related to cars. Another reason that the future seems to be bright is that sample collectors and slab collectors in general tend to skew young. Many of the people who are collecting samples are people who don't remember a time when certification didn't exist. I'm older than that. I'm 52 now. So when I was a collector as a little kid in the 1980s, there was no such thing as certification, or at least I wasn't aware of it as a child collector. But if you can't remember a time when slabs didn't exist, you're more likely to be a slab collector. Also, there's a few people who wish that slabs didn't exist, and those people are mostly gone by now. And finally, I'll say, remember the sample collector's motto, which is buy the slab, not the coin. And thanks for listening. If you're interested, here's my contact info. Best way to find out what I'm doing is Instagram. There's my email, and I do answer Facebook messages also.
Thank you, David. There are a few questions that I can run past you. I think you answered this first one, but I'm going to read it anyway just to clarify. I see your example is marked sample. Is this a marking standard with sample slabs?
In the strict definition, yes. In the more general definition, the slab does not necessarily need to be labeled sample. What matters more is the intent of the people who gave it away rather than what's on the label. For example, there's some that aren't labeled sample, but I know they were given away as free samples. Like the Blanchard one I mentioned isn't labeled sample. In the early days of ANAX, they gave away often slabs that had low value world coins in them. So strictly speaking, yes, but speaking more broadly, no.
Okay. Is there a rule of thumb for identifying a highly desirable sample slab? For example, with Dansko coin albums, any foreign albums are highly desired.
Yeah, good. I'd say one rule of thumb is generally the older the better. So if you've got a sample slab that's in a crudely made holder with a bad dot matrix printing on it, that's probably a good one. If it has a date on it, generally the older the date, the better. The other rule is generally the ones from the big graders are going to be more valuable because there's more people are putting together sets from the big graders. There are exceptions because there's a few other graders that are obscure but still high. So older and major graders. Oh, also the better the coin inside, the better. If you have one that has a state quarter and one that has a silver eagle in it, probably the one with the silver eagle.
Okay. Have you ever come across a counterfeit sample slab? If so, what was the story behind that?
I have not. No. Well, no, I wouldn't say I have. No one, as far as I know, is trying to counterfeit old holders. There's people who are counterfeiting new holders, and you would think people might try to counterfeit the old ones because they're generally not as well made. They don't have any anti-counterfeiting measures, but I haven't seen that so far.
Okay. What is the biggest unanswered question the sample slab community is trying to figure out?
Wow.
These are some big questions.
Yes, they are. What I would like to know most is how many of these samples were given away. And that's probably something we'll never know. So the first sample slab ever given away was done by PCGS at the February 1986 Long Beach show. They had proof Roosevelt dimes on them, and the serial number was solid 0. I have no idea how many were given away because as collectors, as coin collectors, we're spoiled in that we usually know the exact production number of the items we're talking about. Most collectors have no idea. If you're a sports collector and you want to know how many 1930 Bowman baseball cards were made, the only people who know that are the people at Bowman baseball cards, and they threw away those records in 1934. So nobody knows any more than anyone kept track of how many pins or lanyards or baseball caps or sweatshirts they gave away. If those records ever surface, I would love to know.
Are errors on slab labels worth more?
A little bit, not too much. in the certifiers call label errors mechanical errors, or mech errors for short. There are some people who try to pursue slabs that have errors on them, but they're not as rare as you might think. The certifiers, they certify millions of coins, which means they make thousands of mistakes. I had a friend who worked at Stax Bowers in the World Coin department. He said every box of 20 they got back from NGC usually had one mistake on it. Although he was working with really obscure, complicated stuff, medieval, ancient, hammered coins. So those were hard.
Yeah.
There are more errors than you might think on samples because they were not made with the same care that production coins are. So it's more common than you might think, for example, to have a coin that is, for example, a 1921 Morgan dollar, 1921D Morgan dollar, but the sample simply says 1921 because the people in marketing who are not coin experts didn't think to turn the coin over and look for the mid mark.
Yeah.
So a little bit, but not too much.
Okay. When the third edition of the Sample Slabs book is available, how will it be available or distributed for purchasing?
Well, I'll definitely let people know through my my newsletter. Like I said, Instagram, which is my name, at Schwager David, is the best way to know what I'm doing if you use that. Or I usually I'll probably sell some of them myself and some on eBay, but I try to do, this is an A&A talk, it's not for profits. I don't want to talk about sales. So
That's
I have
okay.
nothing.
So your socials is where they should probably.
Socials, yes.
Yeah. So will your third edition book contain Canadian coin slabs? PCGS has made sample slabs for all Royal Canadian Numismatic Association conventions for 10 years.
Yes, definitely. I embrace samples no matter what is inside them. So they exist with all kinds of tokens, world coins, currency, just about anything you could think of. Definitely. Yeah. So the RCNA convention samples, I know I've included some of those. Definitely.
Great. One more so far. In your research, what do you consider to be the rarest or holy grail sample slab?
I would say it would be that PCGS Regency that I showed. The Regencies by themselves, if you haven't heard of it, it's a big green label about the size of your, big green slab about the size of your hand. There were about 700 of them made from 1992 to 1996. They were unpopular because of the awkward size and because they were expensive. So any Regency holder is worth at least $1,000, even with a worthless coin inside. The Regency sample, one surfaced at the A&A show in Anaheim in 2016. It was sold to my friend Mike Kittle. The man who sold it to him claimed he had two. So there may be another one. So that would be the best, I'd say.
All right. Looks like that's all our questions. So I'm just going to wrap up and remind everybody that our NumismaTalks are being recorded. They will be available on our new e-learning academy that is kicking off next week, actually. So that is a member benefit. So these lives will still be available the second and fourth Thursday of the month, but recorded versions will be at our e-learning academy starting next week. So please be sure to check for future programs on our website at money.org under the events and learning tab. And there will be an education tab separately coming soon too. So thank you so much, David, for your presentation. I hope everybody has a great afternoon.